drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. A life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time. Stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to the Crazy Life, everybody. Welcome back to those who are our favorite fan listeners. And welcome to the podcast for any new listeners we have out there. We've got some growing numbers and really, really appreciate each and every one of you, as we've mentioned before, and we'll always continue to mention. We love the fact you listen to us. We love hearing from you. So please share with us. That being said, anyways, my name's Jen, to those who don't know me by now. I'm the hostess at the mostest for the podcast, and my co-host extraordinaire, Bryan. Hey, Bryan.
Hi.
How's it going?
Not too bad.
Good. It's been a couple days since we've talked, because as some of you know, our last one was a little bit late. So hasn't been a whole bunch of time in between podcasts, but this is actually going to be a really good show, I think, for you guys. So, Bryan, anything new, interesting, and or exciting you'd like to share?
Not really. I guess, a little bit, but not anything huge, is that I finally got, thanks to our pal and, fill-in host, Heno, I was finally able to use a phone that doesn't delay my text messages by 3 hours.
That's always helpful.
Which is nice because, there's been a couple things I've missed, like someone texting me, hey, do you want to do this? And I don't get it until it's too late, or that kind of a thing. Or, like I told you, there was a comedian in town that I love that we could have got free tickets to, but I didn't get the text until, like, half an hour before his show or something like that. So there was just no way it would happen.
None of that is good for someone who's a self-proclaimed hermit.
Right. And also not for somebody with, it stinks for, like, anxiety, too, because I don't, at least my texts were going through,
Right.
But there were times I text people and not get a response, and be like, okay, and different times doing salty language, Tony would text me to tell me he was ready to go, but I didn't get it. So he'd
Right.
end up, like, DMing me on Twitter or something and be like, hey, I'm ready to go. I'm like, oh, okay,
Uh-huh.
So, and usually he'd be like, I assume your garbage phone is not sending or not receiving messages. So,
Right. The
yeah.
Dino 4.
Yep. So that thing's put to bed, and I've, moved to a 5, which is still not where I want to be, but way better than what I had. So, and it's amazing how much lighter this thing is than the 4. I didn't realize how much lighter the 5 is. So
You get a bigger screen too, don't you?
yeah, a little bit. It's like if you look at the icons, you have one more row of icons at the bottom.
Okay.
Or like, the apps, So,
Right.
which is also nice. I like the keyboards a little bit better and stuff. I'm not going to get into that, but it's nice because it takes a little bit of a stressor off. Even though it's not a major one, it's just, it sucks when I already, like you said, I have I'm predisposed to not want to do things. And then when you have a phone that's not getting text, it makes it seem like I'm just ignoring people. And that's not what I was doing. So,
Right.
yeah.
That makes sense.
That's about it, yeah.
So it's interesting because, our cell phones have become such a big part of who we are that when you have an older one, it's tough because it's almost like it kicks you out of society because you lose the connection with people.
Yeah.
Because everyone connects through their phones.
Right.
You
well,
know,
and, like I couldn't use, like, people are various times talking about Periscope and different stuff that, you know, the app, and I couldn't use it. Like, I could watch videos, but I couldn't make videos with it because my phone just never wanted to cooperate.
Yeah.
You know, so, and it stunk because, you know, this last weekend when I was at that beer fest, you know, and me and our friend T went to Applebee's, and there was a guy just annihilating songs, and I would have loved to have some video of it because he knew he was awful, you know, but he was singing "Alive" by Pearl Jam, and, you know.
Well, you know, there ain't no party like a party at Applebee's.
I know, as we say over on Salty Language, forever ago, it's the after party at the Bees. Woo!
Yep.
So
Woo woo.
I can't even tell you what episode that is, so I can't even really tell you where to find that joke, but.
Well, you know that you remember where that came from, right?
No.
The party at Applebee's?
I remember that it was because they were open late. That's all I remember.
Remember New Year's Woman?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. I forgot they stopped for margaritas at a Mexican restaurant, and then it was that's right, party at the Bees.
To bring everybody up to speed, sorry, we kind of had a private joke there, but Bryan and I, before we went to a New Year's Eve party one year, we stopped by Applebee's to have dinner. And so it was very busy, so we sat at the bar. And when we sat at the bar, there's this woman next to us, and her man was on the other side of her. And she was having a blast.
Yeah, she was hammered.
She was having a blast. She was talking to us. She was talking to everybody. And at one point, she's like, there ain't no party like a party at Applebee's. Woo!
Yep.
And we just kind of laughed. We're like, yep.
Yeah,
yep,
you know,
no party like Applebee's.
I actually forgot, because what it is actually is it's a merging of two jokes, because the other was on Salty Language. Tate told Tony and I about how she was seeing commercials for Late Night at the Bees, that it became like a dance party after, I think it was Tate. Anyway, but the story was that Applebee's was staying open later, but after a certain time it became a dance club. Or, you know, so you could go in and whatever. So the two things merged, you know, because, you know, we just thought the party at the Bees, because that's what they were calling it in the commercial for it. They were calling it the Bees instead of Applebee's. So
gotcha.
That's where the Bees came from. But you're right. It started with that, and it merged with the other.
Yeah.
So
quite interesting.
Yeah.
But, hey, you know, you never know where you're going to meet people. You never know what kind of fun you're going to end up having.
Yeah.
So just, I guess, enjoy it and laugh about it, and don't take life too seriously is the catchphrase on that one.
Yeah.
So going back to your phone, the big question of the hour, is you going to trade it in and get some monies?
What, my old one?
Yeah.
Yeah, get what, like $1.50?
You see it all over the place. People are buying phones.
Yeah. I've heard that there's value to the older, like, iPhones and stuff in other countries. But I have no idea. I know somebody, like, we had on Salty Language, her name's Alicia. She was telling me about it the one time, so I might get a hold of her and see if there's any shot at any value to it. I doubt there is, because, you know, why would you want that thing?
Exactly.
But I guess there's, in other countries, like, where they're not as advanced as we are, they fix them. And when they fix them, then they, you know, they have value there. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know, pay a little bit forward.
I'll probably just keep it just in case I have an issue with this one, because it does work. It's just got issues, you know. So
right.
Kind of
well, like all of us.
Yeah.
We do work, but most of us have issues.
Yeah.
So I guess, and for me, things have been going, you know, pretty good. The big thing that's going on with me is I've been sleeping a lot, and the sleeping is really helping me.
That's good. Well, I guess it's good. It just depends on, you know, how much sleep you're getting, I guess. Because if you're like, you know, man, I feel fantastic, but I'm sleeping like 18 hours a day, it's like, well, that may not be as good.
So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I'm getting I'm getting I'm getting about 8 to 9, which is really helping. It's helping
Yeah.
me kind of curb my anxieties and stuff and really kind of settle down and allowing me time to kind of do my own thing. So, I think with all the craziness and crazy schedule I've been keeping, just having sleep and relaxing, I think, has just really been very, very beneficial.
Yeah.
Feeling really good right now.
That's good.
Yeah, so that's a good thing. With that kind of brings me to our topic this week is borrowing stress. And I think a lot of times what we find ourselves in these situations where we want to be supportive of friends and stuff, we want to be caring for our loved ones, and we want to be there to help them. But sometimes people's stress it's almost like the flu or some sort of other communicable disease, shall we say, where pretty soon if you hang out with someone who has it, you're going to end up with it.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes quite addicting.
Yeah.
And pretty soon you find yourself stressed out and upset, and you're really not quite sure why. And it's just kind of because you've been hanging out with the people who are really stressed out and stuff. So I think a good reminder for this podcast, I think, would be make sure you understand where your stress is coming from, if it's truly your stress or are you borrowing somebody else's stress, and how to really kind of focus to get rid of that and to really make sure that you're understanding, am I upset or am I upset for somebody else?
Yeah, because we tend to be sponges,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't matter what it is. It's I've read various things about, they tell you that if you're a person who's kind of predisposed to be negative, to maybe, to take a look at the people that you associate with. Are they negative? If so, remove yourself from them and put yourself into a group of people that are positive, in the hopes that usually you will reflect, you'll soak up and reflect like the attitude of the people you're with the most. So if they're positive, you tend to be more positive, even, and it's not always going to work. It's not like you can, have clinical depression and just put yourself around positive people and all of a sudden, hey, I'm cured. But it may improve your overall attitude,
Exactly. And it's easier to stay positive if you're around positive.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that you should, if someone's getting negative, just, turn your back on them or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just, moderate it and make sure that and also help them to recognize that, yes, they're kind of in a negative space right now, and try to help them find their way out of it versus having them bring you down into it.
Yeah, and it's tough because, I think I mentioned on here before about how I have a hard time with that because of my depression, and I want to help people because I know what it's like to fight through that tar pit, and when I see other people struggling in it, I want to help them, but at some point I can't anymore. Like I just cannot do it because it's again, I'll go back to what we've talked about. It's, you have to, at some point you have to go, I have to go take care of me for a little bit. I just can't heap negativity on me all day. I'm really sorry, but I've got enough of my own, kind of a thing. And it's a tough, that's what I've mentioned before about being selfish. It's a really hard thing for me to do because I always want to help people, but at some point I just have to basically, put the close sign up and, regroup, essentially. Because if I don't, I'll find, and I mentioned in our social media episode, actually, about how if I'm in kind of a bad way and I get on Twitter and I start seeing other people's depressed type comments, that I start posting depressed comments, and I found that I spiral really quickly that way. So, I have to take a step back from that, because if I don't, I'm just going to sit there for hours just posting negative stuff,
Absolutely. Well, I mean, there's an interesting article that actually you found and forwarded on to me From the Huffington Post. It's from a woman who's an author. She wrote Emotional Freedom. Her name is Judith Orloff, and she is an MD. Let me see here. What she writes is, in my book, Emotional Freedom, I emphasize the importance of learning how to stay centered in a stressful, highly emotionally charged world. Since research has shown that emotions can be contagious, you can potentially catch fear, anger, or joy from people without realizing it. If you tend to be an emotional sponge, it's vital to know how to avoid taking on an individual's negative emotions or the free-floating kind that comes in crowds. Another twist is that chronic anxiety, depression, or stress can turn you into an emotional sponge by wearing down your defenses. Suddenly, you become hyper-attuned to others.
That would be me. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Me too.
Yep.
Especially with those with similar pain.
Yep.
That's how empathy works. We zero in on hot-button issues that are unresolved in ourselves. Negative emotions can originate from several sources. When your feelings may be your own, it may be someone else's, or it may be a combination. So, I thought that was very, very interesting because, like you said, we do become emotional sponges. Yeah. And one thing I'm hypersensitive to is not just other individuals, but crowds.
Yeah.
I am super hypersensitive to crowds. And crowd mentality is one of the scariest things for me. You want to make a horror film that'll hit me in home?
Yeah, instead of birds, just call it crowds.
Just call it crowds.
And it's just a bunch of people trying to get past you.
Honestly,
yeah.
Was it 1996 Woodstock?
Yeah.
We're around that year. I think the year might be off, but the second Woodstock, that is my nightmare.
Yeah.
It's just crowd mentality. Somebody gets in their head and they start moving and the entire crowd starts moving, and if you fall down, you get trampled, or, things get destroyed and you can't stop anything. You have no control. Oh, yeah. I could go on. But yeah. Scary, scary, scariness.
Right. And like me, like that, like you said, that point in there, it's so right, is I'm super sensitive to people that have, especially depression. And it's and the main reason is because a lot of things that afflict people don't lead to suicide. Depression can, so I'm very, very aware of that, and I've known people who've killed themselves because of depression. So I want, I want to try and stop that train before it gets to that. You know what I mean? So I'm super sensitive to that whole thing.
Exactly. I mean, and that's. It's interesting because, like, as she writes, she said, don't shoulder negativity that doesn't belong to you.
Yeah.
This wasn't something I always knew how to do. Growing up, my girlfriends couldn't wait to hit the shopping malls and go to parties, and the bigger the better. But I didn't share their excitement. I always felt overwhelmed, exhausted around large groups of people, though I was clueless as to why. What's the matter with you, friends would say, shooting me the weirdest looks. All I knew was that crowded places and I just didn't mix. I'd go there feeling just fine, but I'd leave nervous, depressed, or with some horrible ache or pain. Unsuspectingly, I was a sponge, sensing the emotions of people around me. With my patients, I've also seen how absorbing other people's emotions can trigger panic attacks, depression, food, sex, or drug binges, and a plethora of physical symptoms that defy traditional medical diagnosis. The Centers for Disease and Control and Prevention report that more than 2 million Americans suffer from chronic fatigue. It's likely that many of them are emotional sponges.
Which so, you can totally see, because I think about this. If you find yourself as an emotional sponge and you're at work, how many people do you, and I'm not saying you know what I'm saying, I'm saying you as in general, how many people that you work with just gripe all day? And you're just, by the end of the day, even if you've had a good day and whatever, it's exhausting to be around people like that they just won't stop. And a lot of times it isn't that they suffer from any sort of a mental illness or anything. It's just they've gotten so caught up in that negativity that they just won't let it go, and that's why or maybe they do suffer from something, you never know, but it's like, it's, when you get around people like that, that's that person at work that everyone sees coming and they're like, And they immediately, that takes you down. Just thinking about them having a conversation with you just drops you, because you know the whole time you've got to try to be like, well, it's not as bad as you're making it out to be. And it's, you're just, it's exhausting to do that. So, it makes sense when she makes a comment about how people could deal with fatigue. It's like just all day you're dealing with people that are just putting you in a tiring place, basically.
Exactly. And I find the flip also happens with me is if I'm around someone who is really balanced and just kind of chill, I could get really worked up about something. As soon as I'm around them, it's like all of a sudden it's not as big of a deal. You feel better. You're like, you know what? You're right. This is kind of silly.
Yeah.
And it's just like that breath of fresh air.
It's fun. Real quick, sorry. I was just thinking, I just said all that about the person who's constantly negative. I actually think the person who's constantly positive is every bit as bad. Because they're the emotional flip side of that. Is it's exhausting to try to match their energy. Either way,
Absolutely,
whether
right.
it's too positive or too negative, it's exhausting to try to be either one. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree. 100% agree. I mean, the people I'm talking about, though, are just kind of like the ones that are they're just chill. They just give off a really cool energy.
Yeah.
And I call them my water to my spark.
Yeah.
Because as I get amped up, as I'm getting all like, frazzled and all sparky about things, they just come in and it's like a cool drink of water and it's just like, okay.
Yeah.
They just have this way of soothing me and just making me feel, without patronizing or anything like that, it's just like, oh, okay.
Right.
And, all of a sudden things are cool. I
think it's because they're not constantly telling you how to fix yourself. Those are generally the people who are just like, you're just like, oh my God, this, or whatever, or, oh man, there's this and that, and they're like, don't worry about it, tomorrow, but they're not, cheer up, or, oh, it could be worse, and, giving you all these things, like they just listen generally, like they just listen and let it roll off of them, and I don't know how people can do that, but
me neither. I mean, I don't get it,
yeah.
But they're very special people.
Yes.
And usually, especially when I find them at work, they move up quickly.
Yeah. As long as they're not indifferent.
Right. Exactly.
Because you can be indifferent and do those same things, but it's not. You give off a feeling of detachment to everybody because you are.
Right.
But those people still feel engaging and whatever. And you're right. It's because they're the ones that you look at and go, they don't panic.
Right.
When something goes wrong or bad, they're the ones that are like, all right, like let's take care of this, and
Now, I will say, for those of you who are out there that believe in energy and auras and things like that, this doesn't really, it kind of brushes on that, but doesn't really go too in depth in it.
Yeah.
My personal feelings on a lot of those things is that I believe that we do have personal energies. I don't know about auras. I don't know about, a lot of the
well, even what we just talked about. It's if I'm constantly depressing or I'm constantly like hyped up, I'm giving off an energy. Even if you don't buy into the whole energies and that kind of stuff, it's still, you're giving off a vibe of some sort, so.
And I can't think of the actual term for it, and I apologize because it's not coming to mind.
Yeah.
It's not going to come to me. It basically new age type thinking. And I've read some books and stuff on it, but it's just not 100% me. But I can see where people are coming from.
Yeah,
fully support. If that's your belief and where you go with it,
right,
go for it.
That's kind of my thing. Is it's like I'm not a religious person, but if that's what keeps you in a positive mindset, fine, that's great.
Yeah, whatever works for you, use it.
With yoga, meditation, prayer, any of that kind of stuff. If that's what it takes for you to kind of recenter yourself, and go for it. I'm not here to tell anybody any one thing doesn't work. If it works
Exactly.
for you, then hey, that's great. You know, as long as you're not hurting somebody else, I'm on board. You know,
Right.
may
Exactly.
not be, it may not be for me, but here it is. You know, kind of a thing.
Now, the first thing that she talks about is first ask yourself, is the feeling mine or someone else's? It could be both. If the emotion, such as fear or anger, is yours, gently gently comfort what's causing it on your own or with professional help. Do not try to pinpoint the obvious generator. For instance, if you've just watched a comedy, yet you came home from the movie theater feeling blue, you may have incorporated the depression of people sitting beside you in close proximity. The energy fields overlap. The same is true with going to a mall or packed concert. Yes and no.
Well,
I kind of get where she's coming from.
Yeah, I can give like, I've been to really bad concerts and I've been to really good concerts, and there is some truth to that as far as a concert goes. I don't know about the mall and stuff because there's so many people and you're walking by each other so fast that I'm not sure I grab the same vibe there. But at a concert, you know, like when I've mentioned a concert I went to a few months ago with Tony, and I was like, you could just feel how much the crowd was, like, you know, giving to the band, and the band was giving, like, you could just feel it. There was kind of a buzz to the air. And so, and I've also been to concerts where there's just no chemistry. Just, the crowd's just not feeling the band, you know?
Yeah, and I've been in places where the crowd has even turned.
Yeah.
You know, and if a crowd turns on you, oof, that's bad.
It's weird, though. Have you ever felt that coming out of a movie? I don't think I ever have.
I haven't felt other people coming out of the movie, but I drastically feel the emotional connection with movies. I have to kind of be careful about which movies I watch because with like horror movies and things like that, if it's a good one and I'm invested in one of the characters, it gets really bad for me.
Yeah.
Because I take on their fear and I take on their, you know, so I got to be careful. But on the flip side, like comedies or romantic comedies and things like that, I can completely take on that feelings too. It's like I can be in a bad mood and watch a romantic comedy or a comedy, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I'm in a great mood.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I mean, that's the whole point of the movies is they're supposed to make you feel something, but it's weird how, I don't know. I was trying to think of a way. Like, I felt positive energy from people sitting next to me in a movie. Like, you laugh. So if everybody's laughing, you kind of get that vibe of, hey, this is funny. You know, but it can work the opposite way to where everyone else is laughing and you're like, this isn't funny. I've been in movies like that where most of the crowd's laughing and I'm like, this is really not that funny. Same with comedians, you know, because it's subjective.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know that I've ever really felt, even bad movies I've been to, usually I don't really feel the negative energy from people until we get outside and start talking about the movie.
Yeah.
You know, like as you're leaving maybe because you hear everyone, oh, this is a piece of garbage and, you know, I want my money back. You know, I mean, I've been through that, but I don't know. It's weird. I don't think I'm a huge crowd energy kind of person, I guess. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's
like I said, concerts I totally get. I've been through all the emotions in concerts.
Sure.
So
it's interesting. I mean, kind of put a finer point on it. You know how you can tell when a couple's been fighting, even though they're not actively fighting in front of you?
Yeah.
You know, it's stuff like that. You can feel the emotion coming off of them.
Yeah, well, part of it too is, I mean, you know, generally, you know, you observe body language a little bit too, but yeah,
right.
I know what you mean.
But even if they're trying to fake it, you know, like fake everything's okay.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, so that's not right.
Well, usually that's worse. You know what I mean?
You're just kind of like, something's not right. I think you're right. There's a good, you know, body language and visual cues, but
yeah.
I think there's just also just a feeling that it's like it's kind of awkward or something.
Sure.
Something's funny is not right, and you can just get this feelings off of people. So you know, I think that in different people in different situations, that I think you'll feel it more than others. But I think definitely we can agree that you can get it off of people.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, and I think what she's saying in the first half of it, which is if the emotion is fear and anger is yours, you can kind of confront it, but you also have to understand that if it's not yours, if you're feeling bad and it's not because of something that's affecting you directly,
Yeah.
You know?
I will say this, that there's an area of this that she could have went into and didn't, which is social media and, like, watching. Like, she does a little bit by mentioning about, you know, like, movies.
Mm-hmm.
But watching the news is the same idea.
Oh, exactly.
You can get so worked up or depressed or whatever from watching the news. And this was actually in another article that I had found a little bit, which, you know, was like, you got to know when to turn off the news, basically. And I actually, for a while, I used to watch the news on DVR. And it wasn't for the commercials to fast forward. I mean, obviously I did, but it was so when they would put on a story that was so depressing or this, I would just go past it. And it was because I'm like, I feel bad for the people, but I don't need this. Like, I can't handle this. Or if it's too much of political rhetoric. You know, like, I'm just like, enough of this garbage and just go past it. Like, right now, anything they pretty much mention about a presidential candidate, I would probably just fast forward past. Because it's all just hot garbage. You know what I mean? It's all just going to work you up one way or the other. And social media, it's kind of the same idea in that it's really easy to pull other people's energy from social media. You know, because you see somebody who keeps posting about, you know, their depression or how they're hurting from this or that, you know, a breakup or what have you, and you just you feel so bad, especially if it's anybody you've made any sort of a contact with, you know. But even not, it's still there, so you can easily pick up a lot of it from that also. So you have to be careful that, you know, you, like I had said, I can sit there and be a little depressed, and by the time I'm done on Twitter, I can be very depressed, you know. So I have to understand where I got to draw my lines so that I don't, you know, fall into that.
So you don't negatively affect yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, the next thing that she mentions is, when possible, distance yourself from the suspected source. Move at least 20 feet away, see if you feel relief. Don't err on the side of not wanting to offend strangers. In a public place, don't hesitate to change seats if you feel a sense of depression imposing on you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, that's a great thing. I mean, one thing, I do this actually a lot in crowds, is if I'm feeling uncomfortable, I move to the edge of the crowd.
Yes.
You know, I get
I
out
do the
of
same thing. Yep.
the whole mix of everything. I just take a step away so that so I feel like I have more control, and so I can kind of relax a bit.
To use like a grill analogy, you move from the direct heat to the indirect heat.
Exactly.
So you can still feel the energy kind of a thing, but you're not feeling all the energy.
Right.
Yeah.
And just kind of moderate things. I've done this with people.
Yep. Me too.
You know.
Yep.
I've distanced myself from people before because I just can't handle all of what's going on with them. I do the best I can. Yeah. You know, especially if I care about someone.
Right.
You know, the phone helps. The phone helps put some distance between things. Like, you can talk to someone via text or, you know, different ways, so you're not directly one-on-one with them.
Yeah.
In a space, and that can kind of help diffuse some of that and help you keep your perspective. And a lot of this comes down to balance and perspective, like most of the things that we talk about.
Yep.
It's finding your balance, finding your perspective on things.
This this one here is a really good, I don't want to say trick, but tip for like work. If you find that person that, like I said, whether it's high energy or low energy, whatever it is, if it's you know, realistically at work, you want balance. You want to be as calm of a person as you can be, so that you can do your job without, you know, freaking out, and doing your job without, you know, and you'll be more productive if you're not constantly negative. You know what I mean? So you're looking for your balance anyway. So if a person affects your balance like this, and you can, you know, go to the break room to get a cup of coffee, or go to the bathroom, or just go outside for a minute for, you know, if you smoke a cigarette or whatever it is you need to do for a couple minutes, or even just go outside just to go outside or whatever. You know what I mean? It's sometimes you just do that. And actually, the next tip is what I was going to say. So if you don't mind, I'll just lead right into it.
Yeah, go for it.
Is that, you know, get by yourself, and we've talked about this before. Start focusing on your breath. and, you know, concentrate on your breathing, center yourself. Now, this is the woman's third tip was for a few minutes, center yourself by concentrating on your breath. This connects you to your essence. Keep exhaling stress and inhaling calm. This helps to ground yourself and purify fear or other difficult emotions. Visualize stress as gray fog lifting from your body and hope as a clear light entering. This can yield quick results. And even if you don't do the visualization part of it, which does help, but if you don't do that, just the closing your eyes, breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, and just like count while you're doing it, or focus on something along, you know, to basically you're distracting yourself and recentering your, you know, your blood pressure and all that kind of stuff, you know.
Exactly. And
That tip is, for me, one of the best tips that I've ever heard. When someone first told me that and I started doing that, it's made a huge difference when my anxiety starts ramping up sometimes.
I call it exhaling with purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people, they're like, you're sighing a lot. And I'm like, well, I'm not sighing. I'm exhaling with purpose.
You'll even see some people when they do it, they'll actually kind of, they'll almost do it like they're doing, I don't know what it is, like Tai Chi or something like that, you know, where you like pull positive energy in and then you physically, like you'll actually see people pushing away from their body kind of a thing.
Yeah, and that's a part of yoga. And
yoga, that's why I meant Yoda. But part of yoga, that's why, I don't know why I said Tai Chi. But yeah, so you may even see that, and it's all the same idea though, you know.
Exactly, it's all the same idea, you know, but it's really breaking things down to the utmost basic. You know, the basic blocks of what we do is humans is breathe.
Yeah.
You know, if we stop breathing, we stop living.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you can just focus on something as simple as that and just, you know, let everything else go for the moment and just focus on that breathing in and out, you'll connect yourself to what you're doing and you'll find things become clearer.
Right.
So, you know, just make sure that you just focus on your breathing and try to relax yourself. Remove yourself from the situation if you can. If you can't, breathe and try to relax and try to just let it go.
Yeah. And be very, very careful that, you know, if you start doing the breathing thing, be careful that you're not doing it at any rapid pace that could cause a hyperventilation or anything, you know.
Absolutely.
Be very aware of that, you know. Don't work yourself up with the breathing. If it's not calming you down, then, you know, maybe stop, because you don't want to put yourself into a bad way.
Nope, don't want to do that. And then the next one is stressful emotions such as fear frequently lodge in your gut. Place your palm there as you keep sending loving kindness to that area to soothe stress. For long-standing depression or anxiety, use this method daily to strengthen yourself. It's comforting and builds a sense of safety and optimism. Okay, a little lovey-dovey there for me.
Yeah, me too.
But I get what she's saying. There is power of touch.
Yeah.
There's power of your touch on yourself. There's power of your touch on someone else. Their touch on you. There's absolutely 100% power in touch. You know, give yourself hugs. Probably not in public because people might think you're a little weird. But if you need to, you need to.
Well, then
do
again,
what's best for you.
maybe they'll leave you alone.
True. One of my favorite authors, Leo Buscaglia, which I mentioned on our very first episode, he gives a speech on the power of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And the power of someone calling you crazy, because if they think you're crazy, it allows you the freedom to do whatever the heck you want.
Yeah.
Because you're crazy.
Well, think about it. It goes all the way back to school. Think about in elementary school. If there was a kid or something that you thought was crazy, you stayed away from him.
Exactly.
You know?
They're like, well, who knows what he's going to do? He's unpredictable. We'll just let him be.
Right.
He can do his own thing.
He traded his milk for a carton of paste. I mean, you know?
Yeah. So there is power in crazy. So, you know, but find your balance, because, you know, our goal is not to run people away. Our goal is to bring good people to us.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, balance it out. You know how to do that. But make sure you do touch. There's some people, like someone very close to me actually, he loves the soft touch of just like running your nails over your skin or just very lightly touching. And you can even do that to yourself, just as you're sitting there watching TV or just trying to relax. Just lightly move your fingers over, your leg or your arm, and just, gently just run the fingers back and forth. And just that little bit of a touch will awaken the nerve endings and will start sending like positive energy and stuff through your body.
Unless you're really ticklish, then it may not.
Right. If you're really ticklish, I would recommend avoiding the tickle spots.
Right.
But some generalized area. And I'm not necessarily talking about, the personal touching yourself.
Yeah.
Although that will make you happy. Just, more of a relaxation. Almost kind of like petting a cat or petting an animal. Just kind of slowly pet yourself. Feels a little weird, sounds a little weird, but you will feel better. So, next one is visualize. A handy form of protection many people use, including healthcare practitioners with trying patients, involve visualizing an envelope of white light around your entire body. Think of it as a shield that blocks out negativity or physical discomfort, but allows what's positive to filter in. That's an interesting thought.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's an interesting point. One technique I did learn about visualization is, and actually it's been really, really good for me, is when you can't stop your brain from reviewing situations and things that are going on and you just can't stop your brain, visualize that what's going through your head is actually on film, and on a big piece of film that's running through your brain. Then visualize a pair of scissors, and even use your hands if necessary to kind of, you cut up the ribbon of film and you blow it away. And do that enough times, and it refocuses your brain and on the, act of cutting that up and blowing it away and all that stuff, that you forget about the thoughts that were actually running through your head. So, there is a lot to be said for visualization.
Yeah. Well, you find that anything you do, if there's psychology involved, there's always visualization. Like even if you're teaching a basketball player how to become more confident as a shooter, if you're using the psychology angles, you're going, close your eyes, visualize, or even when your eyes are open, visualize the ball going through the hoop. Like you picture everything. I read a book on bowling psychology that it's, you before your shot, you visualize, your approach, you're throwing the ball, it hitting where you want it to go, it going through the pins as it's supposed to, and then like basically a banner dropping down saying that you've, achieved what you wanted to achieve. And go through this like a foul shot, or, like I said, basketball free throw shooter, you'll see them like mimic the same thing every time, and it's part of that so that their mind is right where it needs to be,
Right. Exactly. I mean, if you visualize it, then it's pretty much controlling your brain in a way that you're focusing it down to what you want to achieve and what you want to do versus kind of letting it go willy-nilly,
Yeah.
It's kind of, that's the whole key of it, is just really, try to focus your body, focus your mind down to a finite point, whether it's breathing or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then picture what you're going to do next and then follow through.
Right.
And, that's what they keep saying with sports, like you mentioned, or, just with anything that you do. People who go on stage, like actors and actresses and stuff, before they go on stage, that's what they do. They have to take a few minutes, focus themselves down, picture what they're going to do. And so they're mentally and physically aware of what they're going to do next, and they're really focused on it.
Yeah.
So visualization is good.
Yeah.
It's a good tool.
It definitely is. And whatever it is you're going to do, there's probably some tips on the internet for, like, specified, you know, for, like, if you're, like I had said, there's bowling ones. If you're an athlete, there's for every sport. There's probably a psychology of and the sport, you know. But even, like, workplace stuff, there's books. There's all sorts of books on the psychology of that. And every one of them, a huge chunk of the book will be visualization. Because it really, it's very important for you to see something in your brain, you know. It helps with your confidence and everything.
Exactly.
So yeah. Or like you said, or to center yourself, whichever. Excuse me. Yeah.
Now, the next point that she makes is look for positive people and situations. Call a friend who sees the good in others. Spend time with a colleague who affirms the bright side of things. Listen to hopeful people. Hear the faith they have in themselves and others. Also, relish hopeful words, songs, and art forms. Hope is contagious and it will lift your mood. You know, and I agree with that. There's definitely, like I mentioned earlier, you know, something about people who can calm you.
Yeah.
You know, whoever it is, we always seem to have a couple people in our lives that we can just rely on to just be that water to kind of cool us down and to just mellow us out.
Right.
You know, make sure you keep those people around you.
Yeah. And that's, you know, that's what, you know, it's nice when you have that person in your life, you know, because whether it's a best friend or, you know, your spouse or, you know, whatever a person might be, even if it's not, even if it's just somebody that you talk to online, but they just get it. You know what I mean? Like, you just know there's no stress between you, kind of a thing. Like they're just there to, you know, just to bullshit with you. Excuse my language, but you know, and that's what they're looking for. Like sometimes just mindless, just banter is all you need. You know, because it can just be enough. You know, people have asked for years and years, like, didn't understand with me and my best friend Tony, how we just, at times, we just shrug stuff off of us, you know. And a lot of it was we knew when we got together that we weren't going to obsess on negativity or this or that. It was just, you know, and if we were, like, generally one of us brings a negative topic to the table, within a couple minutes we're both busting up over something. You know, that's just what we do. That's how we cope with it. And it's nice to know that, you know, that anytime I call him and say, hey, man, you know, put up the bat signal, basically, that it, you know, I know that it's going to be, like you said, it's just going to be chill and everything's going to be all right. You know, like it calms you right back down and gets you where you need to be. Yeah.
I think a perfect example, there's a couple examples that come to mind. And one of them is basketball and the relationship between the two main characters in basketball, which, by the way, is a really good movie. If you guys if no one's seen it or whatever, go out and see it. But basketball, the two main characters are two guys that have been friends for a really long time. They have a moment where they have an entire conversation of nothing but the word dude.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just the way they connect with each other, they understand just how they use the word dude and, you know, their inflection on the word and stuff. They have an entire conversation, nothing but dudes, and they completely understand exactly what each other are talking about.
Right.
You know, and it's just that type of relationship. It's amazing if you can find it. Yeah. I didn't think I'd ever find it. I do have a friend that I do have that unspoken language with now. Yeah. Which is amazing. So, you know, if you find it, by all means, grab it. It's so rare, but they do exist out there.
Yep.
Now, the other situation that pops in my mind is when Bryan's best friend Tony, when he lost his father, and he came over, I think it was the same day or the day after or something like that. And I was over, and I saw him, and of course, you know, the first thing I do is like, dude, how you doing? You know, everything okay? Anything I can do? And, you know, there's nothing. And he's, you know, he appreciates my concern and stuff. And he just kind of looked at Bryan, and Bryan's like, Grand Theft Auto? He's like, oh, yeah. Beer? Yeah, fridge. Got it. So cracked open a couple beers, sat down, they started playing video games. And later I talked to Bryan and I'm like, well, is Tony okay? Did you talk to him about it? He's like, we don't work that way.
Yeah.
He's like, he needed a beer and he needed to play Grand Theft Auto and blow some stuff up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm like, okay,
it's
that
like,
doesn't make any sense.
Right. It's just sometimes you don't need to sit down and suss out a whole story. Sometimes you just need a good distraction.
Yeah.
And really with him and I, that's what it comes down to. It's and that's what we find on our podcast a lot. Is one of us will come in and be like, oh, what a week, it's been awful, meh, meh, and by the end of it, we're laughing at the dumbest things we can think of, and afterward, we're both just like, man, now I feel, it's almost like a recharge, just sitting there, just being idiots for 2 hours.
Exactly.
But that's how we work, and it's worked for us for nearly 30 years, so there's low drama between us,
Right.
So it's,
So definitely, reach out to people and work on those types of relationships because they're so important to have, especially when you're sitting and getting out of control in your own way and feeling other people's energies and just getting stressed.
Yeah.
And having that cooling person near you, so important.
Mm-hmm.
Seek them out. Make friends with them, and and try to find that. That's really, really important.
Right, and it goes back to what we talked about on the last episode with support systems. Is that's that's a nice tool to have in the toolbox. Is that that person that just gets it. Whether you need a good kick in the hiney or you need just a smack in the head to straighten you out. Or just like you said, a couple of beers and some video games. It's just nice to have, that person. If you don't, you can't stress over that because it's just, whatever. But that's where the other tips we talked about can help, to where you can try to do the stuff for yourself,
Exactly.
Because really a lot of this with the emotions and stuff is, a lot of it comes down to, or the negativity, is finding distractions.
Mm-hmm.
A way of just breaking the cycle.
Absolutely. And set yourself up for success. If you know certain things are high-risk situations for you, make sure that you kind of prep people around you. You don't have to do a lot. You don't have to tell them the whole story and what's going on. But, like, when I go in crowds, whoever I'm with, I always give them a heads up. Yeah. I always say, you know what, I don't do very well with crowds. If I'm feeling uncomfortable, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab your arm.
Yeah. I'm
going to loop my arm with yours.
Right.
So if I loop my arm with yours, that's kind of my signal that I need somebody, a little support.
Well, you basically are grounding yourself with their arm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just kind of give them a heads up. Nothing major. Most people can accept it pretty well. It's easier because I'm a girl. So I can loop arms with a girl or a guy, and it's pretty acceptable.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's more difficult for guys to loop arms with other guys. But, do what you can. But just kind of, make sure people around you are aware of some of the things that may happen. Don't necessarily have to surprise them. Like I said, that's so simple. I just tell people ahead of time, like, it just as an FYI, if I grab your arm or anything like that, it's just because I'm feeling uncomfortable, and it just makes me feel a little bit more comfortable being, hooked to somebody.
Right.
So that I don't feel like the crowd's taking me away, type of a thing.
Like when we had Heno on, and he made that comment, when you change when the rules change, let people know the rules have changed, and that's what happens there. Because in a normal environment, you're fine. When you go into a crowd, the rules have changed now, so you need to identify and notify the people around you that the rules have changed, and here's what happens with here's the new rules, basically.
Exactly.
Not a negative thing. It's just what you need to do, so that, like you said, so they're not like, I mean, something like you just said with the arm, that's generally, no one's going to think a whole lot of it, but it's still, still nice to know ahead of time.
Exactly. So, I mean, not to mention, no, I don't think anybody I would be with would necessarily pull away, but
right.
They may be a little bit surprised or maybe unexpected versus me kind of just telling them ahead of time. So right. I'm not a huge touchy-feely person.
Yeah.
I do to a certain extent, but I'm not, over the top touchy-feely. So,
right.
In some circumstances, I could see it being a little bit unusual for someone. So, just kind of giving them heads up. I avoid, like I said, horror movies.
Yeah.
Suspense I'm good with, but flat out horror movies I really got to be careful of, because if the character is incredibly scared, even suspense I got to watch. If the character gets incredibly scared, I feed off of that emotion, and it can really mess me up.
Yeah.
It can give me nightmares. I
Yeah.
mean, I am 37 years old, and I can still get nightmares from watching a scary movie.
Yeah.
It's just, I know that about myself, so
Right.
I have to limit what I can watch and just kind of keep an eye on things. And if I feel myself getting too over emotional or too over connected, sometimes I have to get up and walk away.
Right. Which is nice, especially if you're watching it at home, you can do it. You can pause it, you can get up. You can basically go through the steps of grounding at that point, because that really kind of is what you need, is to re-ground yourself in reality. Like, this is a movie, this isn't real, this is, that kind of stuff. So it's, versus a theater, it's a little harder because you don't want to walk out and,
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you might, I have to go to the bathroom, which is a fine way of doing that,
Exactly. Taking a step out, going into bright lights, just going, okay, just a movie.
Yeah.
Get a little over emotional. It's okay.
Yep.
And just kind of bringing yourself down.
Right.
In the whole thing, make sure that you do not chastise yourself or beat yourself up for being sensitive.
Yeah.
Especially for men, they get a lot of rap about being sensitive. It is who you are, and you can fake not being sensitive, but all you're doing is putting up a front, not letting people see the real you, not really letting people connect to you, and you not connect to them.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't help anybody.
Right, and another side of that is if, as that article we cited in this episode mentioned, if you're a person with a mental illness, whether it's anxiety, depression, whatever, that you can, because of the disease, become hypersensitive. Mm-hmm. So if you give yourself grief about that, then, you know what I mean? It's a self-manifesting shame spiral, essentially. I mean, obviously, but you can feed into your own depression or anxiety that way. So definitely be very careful of, hey, I'm emotional, it's okay. And even if you just go, this isn't me, like you recognize this is my mental illness. This isn't me, because like normally I wouldn't have cried at this, but because of this, I do. I mean, I'll openly admit I do at times. Mm-hmm. Just certain things hit me, and I mean, I just dump tears. And, normally I'm an emotional person, but before I went through a lot of the depression and stuff, I didn't cry a lot. Now I cry at a lot of really dumb shit, dang it, did it again. But, I cry at stuff that I wouldn't normally have cried at. And I know that part of that is not who I am. It's just more that I'm more, it's almost like you have a raw nerve. Mm-hmm. From years of just wearing down at it, and it's just harder to just go and just whatever. Mm-hmm. So,
and have appropriate reactions.
Yeah, exactly.
What it comes down to. Yeah, and it happens to me often, and I kind of have to. I try to mitigate as much as I can.
Yeah.
But I have an appropriate reaction sometimes.
Yep.
I cry when it's not really appropriate for me to cry.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily because it's just my reaction to it. It's not that I'm incredibly sad. It's not really because I'm incredibly anything. It's just that's my reaction. Mm-hmm. One of my friends, he has quite a few guns, and the guys are out shooting, and he's like, "Oh, hey," he's like, "Why don't you come out and shoot a gun?" And I looked at him, I'm like, "I'll cry." And he's like, "You'll cry?" I'm like, "Absolutely." I said, I've never shot a gun before in my life, so there's going to be some elements of fear. Mm-hmm. I said the loud noise and the recoil is going to make me cry.
Yeah.
I said, I know me, right. And that's just going to be my natural reaction.
And I totally agree with you, because if someone just walked up to you out of the blue and just shouted at you, you would probably cry.
Yep.
because that's how you've reacted to things over the years. Not that you're like you said, not that you're sad or whatever. You're just, it's such an emotionally jarring thing for you that everything just lets loose, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's just, and it sucks because, people see you crying and they think you're nuts.
Yeah.
Because they're like, there's nothing to cry about. Why is she crying?
Yeah.
And it's just, that's what my body does.
Yep.
I can't help it. I can sometimes feel it coming on, so I can kind of remove myself from situations. Sometimes I can't, if somebody surprises me. I mean, it's the same thing. I don't scream. I eep.
Yeah.
Which is very amusing. I mean, it amuses me as well as others. But
Yeah.
if you surprise me, I cannot scream.
Yeah.
I will squeal.
Yeah.
Or I'll squeak.
Yeah.
And that's just my body's reaction.
Well,
to things.
because it's like you pull in rather than push out.
Exactly.
Yeah, because the scream is you're pushing out, like
Right.
It's like eep. It's just pull your hands in as you're doing it. Like everybody listening, pull your hands in and just go eep like that. That's exactly what happens. And like you said, it's really funny, but it's that's what you do. So
Right.
yeah.
And it.
Usually I'm like So.
I think one of the most amusing situations was when we were watching. We were in Tony, Bryan's best friend's basement. All of us were hanging out, watching Children of the Corn, and they had a big, giant stand-up of Bruce Willis when he was promoting Nestea, I think.
Brisk.
I think it was
Lipton Brisk.
Nestea iced tea.
No, it was Lipton Brisk.
Oh, thank you,
Yeah.
Lipton Brisk.
Yep.
So, and just this was big poster of him, and we were watching Children of the Corn, and I'm in my traditional position when watching a horror movie, which is gripping a pillow and cuddle up in the tiniest ball I can make myself, gripping a pillow, and Bruce decided he was going to fall on me. So all of a sudden, this big poster from behind me comes looming over me and scared the bejeebers out of me. I eeped and jumped up and ran up the stairs and outside in a matter of not even a couple seconds. And everyone watching the movie, all they saw was all of a sudden me going eep and then running. So, of course, very funny all the way around, and I can laugh at it because it looked quite amusing, quite funny. But it's just, that's who I am. That's how I react.
Right.
And, in the beginning, especially the tears, I fought the tears, and I would give myself such a hard time over crying at stupid things and just really get on my own case about it. But eventually I've had to come to terms with it, and I have to kind of understand that this is part of it. This is part of me. This is part of how I react, and I just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is communicating, I'll tell people, if I'm crying for some reason, I'll explain to them, succinctly. I'm like, I apologize. This is my body's reaction to being surprised, or this is my body's reaction to what's going on.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily reflective of my emotional feelings.
Right.
It's just my body's reaction.
Yeah.
This is what my body does. And how some people have reflexes to punch or whatever. My reflex is to cry.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Cry and flee. I have a tendency of running.
Well, it's fight or flight.
Oh, yeah. I'm a flighter.
Yep.
No question.
Yep.
I'm a runner.
All right. Well, we should probably wrap up here. We're just over an hour. So.
All right. Well, sounds good. Thank you for listening and joining in with us, folks. And, excuse me. Hopefully, you've got some good tips out of this. I definitely feel I did. And keep at it. Don't beat yourself up. Take it one day at a time, one situation at a time. Center yourself and keep practicing. All of these things that we talk about on this podcast are not things you're going to be able to do immediately overnight and have them 100% work for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. You just got to keep practicing.
Right.
Some things are going to work, some things aren't.
Yeah, I was just going to say, don't get discouraged at some stuff that you hear on this podcast or, if you read books or whatever on the topics. Like, sometimes things just don't work for people, That's why there's so many different ways of coping with different things out there because, this didn't work for somebody, so they came up with something else or this or, that kind of a thing. So don't get discouraged if it doesn't work right away. Or at all, maybe you just go, okay, well, this just isn't for me, and move on to,
Exactly, move on to something else.
Yeah.
There's no wrongs in this.
Yeah.
There's only rights. And, if it works, great. If it doesn't, that's fine. Nothing wrong with you, nothing wrong with it. It's just not it.
Yep.
It doesn't work for you. It's okay. So, with that being said, if you want to continue the conversation with me, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life. As I've said before, I'm not horribly active on Twitter, but as far as posting and stuff, but I am there, and I look at it all the time. So if you messaged me or you copy me in a tweet or whatever.
Mention you, yeah.
I do see it. So please feel free to reach out to me. You can also reach out to the show at the Crazy Life Podcast at outlook.com. And the website is thecrazylifepodcast.weebly.com. You can also catch our back episodes on our website. We are also Stitcher and iTunes, and now part of a radio network or podcasting network.
Yep.
So you can catch us there.
Oh, wait. Which network did you say?
A podcasting network. I didn't say a name.
Oh, okay. So we're part of the Wicked Radio Network, and we're part of Tangent Bound Network. So please go check out those websites as well. We'll tweet out a thing. Which actually leads me to, the show has a Twitter account now. It's at The Crazy Life Pod on Twitter. If you just want to shoot directly to the show, we'll see those things coming through as well. And we tweet out like links to the show and different stuff. So, there's that.
Absolutely. And if they want to talk to you, how can they get in touch with you?
You can find me also at Stunami on Twitter. Or you can find me at salty_language, which is the other podcast I do. And you can find that show at saltylanguage.com or search, same places, iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your podcast downloader is. Just put in Salty Language, and that'll come up. One last thing, or a couple last things here. One, thank you to our pal Heno for doing the intro music. The last couple episodes, I've forgotten to mention his name. He's at Ida Heno on the Twitters. And also, if you like what you hear from us, please share links, on your Twitter or whatever with your friends. And also, please subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever and share if you would. That helps us potentially get into like news and noteworthy and on Stitcher lists and stuff like that, which can really help us kind of find a bigger audience. So if you like what you hear, please share with others, because our goal is just to help people and whatnot, and it takes a lot to get the word out there for podcasts. So.
Absolutely.
And as always, I'll also say that we're not doctors, trained professionals, or therapists of any kind. So if you need help, a professional's help, please seek them out. There's all sorts of directories online for help people finding good mental health professionals and doctors, or use sites out there that allow for people to just talk. If you just need someone to talk to, please hit either of us up, and we'll talk you through something. And last but not least, if you're in a really bad way and you're thinking of doing something drastic, please call the suicide hotline number first, and please don't do anything drastic.
Absolutely. I know it sounds silly, but we do care about each and every one of you. Not just because you're our listeners, but because you're important. So,
yep.
With that, everybody have a fabulous week. Don't forget to claim your wins, set some challenges for yourself, and breathe. Stay centered. So with that, talk to you later.
Welcome to the Wicked Radio Network.